Captain Tessa Moore stood on the bridge of her ship watching her world burn. Through the main screen, she could see New Valeria's second moon glowing like a small sun. The Kreth had been bombing it for 3 days straight. What used to be home to 2 million people was now just melted rock and ash. "Captain, we're getting reports from the outer colonies," her communications officer said. His voice shook as he spoke. "Valeria Prime is under attack. So is Haven Station. The Kreth fleet is everywhere." Tessa closed her eyes for a moment. The Valerian Republic had always been proud of being peaceful. They built hospitals, not weapons. They grew food and made medicine that helped species across the galaxy. They had never hurt anyone. That was supposed to keep them safe. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked. 17, Captain. That's all that's left of the entire Valerian Defense Force. 17 ships against the Kreth Dominion. The Kreth had been planning this attack for years. Their black warships moved through space like giant insects, destroying everything in their path. They didn't want to capture Valerian worlds. They wanted to wipe them out completely. "Send a message to the Galactic Accord," Tessa ordered. "Tell them we need help now." The communications officer nodded and began typing. The Galactic Accord was supposed to protect peaceful species like the Valerians. That was the whole point of joining. When someone attacked you, the other members would come to help. At least that's what the treaties said. Hours passed. Then days. The Kreth kept attacking. More Valerian ships were destroyed. More colonies went silent. Finally, the first response came from the Helix Confederacy. "They're sending their thoughts and prayers," the communications officer said, his voice flat. "They're calling for an emergency meeting to discuss the situation." "How long will that take?" Tessa asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. They need time to review all the legal documents. Tessa felt cold. 2 weeks was too long. By then, there would be no Valerians left to save. She watched another ship explode on her screen. The Peaceful Dawn, commanded by her friend Captain Kess, gone just like that. The next response came from the Zephyrian Council. They were the oldest civilization in the galaxy, wise and powerful. Surely they would help. "The Zephyrians say they're deeply concerned," the communications officer reported. "They're putting economic sanctions on the Kreth. No trade for 6 months." Economic sanctions? Tessa couldn't believe it. "People are dying right now. They say they can't risk a larger war, Captain. Too many innocent lives could be lost." More responses came in over the next day. The Mineral Worlds Alliance offered to send food and medical supplies after the fighting stopped. The Stellar Federation promised to investigate war crimes after the conflict ended. The Academic Union would write a strongly worded letter about the importance of peace. Everyone had excuses. The Kreth were too strong. Getting involved would make things worse. It wasn't their fight. They needed to think about their own people first. Tessa realized the horrible truth. They were alone. The galaxy was going to watch the Valerians die and do nothing to stop it. "Captain," her science officer called out, "we're picking up a massive energy signature. It's coming from the Kreth command ship." On the screen, a huge black vessel appeared. It was 3 times bigger than any Valerian ship. Weapons covered its surface like deadly thorns. This was the ship that had been leading the attacks. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer said. A giant insect appeared on the screen. Its 4 eyes glowed red and its mouth was full of sharp teeth. This was Hive Lord Zektar, the Kreth commander everyone feared. "Valerian ship." The creature spoke in a buzzing voice. "You are the last of your kind in this system. Surrender now and your death will be quick." Tessa stood up straight. "We are Captain Tessa Moore of the Valerian Republic. We demand you stop this attack immediately. Our people have done nothing to deserve this." The Kreth commander laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Your people are weak. You have no weapons, no fighting spirit. The strong survive, the weak die. This is the natural order. The Galactic Accord will stop you," Tessa said, though her voice didn't sound confident. "The Galactic Accord?" Zektar laughed again. "They do nothing but talk. We have been destroying your worlds for days, and where are they? Your precious allies have abandoned you." The transmission ended. Tessa stared at the black screen, feeling the weight of despair. The Kreth commander was right. No one was coming to help them. "Captain, what are your orders?" her first officer asked. Tessa looked around the bridge at her crew. They were scared, but they still looked to her for leadership. These people trusted her to find a way to save their civilization. But how could she fight an enemy this powerful with only 17 ships? "Send out a general distress call," she said finally. Broadcast it on all frequencies to every corner of known space. Tell everyone what's happening here. Maybe someone somewhere will listen. Her communications officer got to work. The message went out across the galaxy, reaching thousands of worlds and space stations. It told the story of the Valerian Republic's destruction. It begged for help from anyone who could provide it. Most species ignored the message. They had already heard about the Valerian situation and decided not to get involved. But the signal traveled far, reaching places that rarely received galactic communications. In a small solar system on the edge of known space, the message was picked up by a space station, orbiting a blue and green planet. The beings who lived there were relatively new to galactic society. Most advanced civilizations barely knew they existed. Admiral Chen Martinez was having coffee in his office when the message came in. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years protecting Earth and its small group of colonies from pirates and asteroid strikes. He had never fought in a real war. "Sir, you need to see this," his aide said, rushing into the office. "We're getting a distress call from the Valerian Republic." Chen frowned. "The Valerians? Aren't they the ones who helped our colony ship 40 years ago?" "Yes, sir. When the New Horizon was damaged by that solar storm, a Valerian medical ship saved everyone on board. They didn't ask for anything in return." Chen read the message, his expression growing darker with each line. An entire civilization was being wiped out while the galaxy watched and did nothing. It reminded him of old stories from Earth's history, when good people died because others were too afraid or selfish to help. "Get me a connection to Earth Command," he ordered. "This is something the Council needs to decide." As the transmission went out, Chen looked through his office window at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were screaming for help. The question was whether humanity would answer that call, even if it meant facing an enemy far more powerful than anything they had ever fought before. The choice would define not just humanity's future, but their soul. The emergency session of the United Earth Council began at midnight. Representatives from every nation and colony attended via hologram, their faces grim in the blue light of the communication screens. Admiral Chen Martinez stood at the center of the room, next to a large display showing the distant Valerian star system. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said President Sarah Chen of the North American Federation. "You want us to take our entire fleet across the galaxy to fight an enemy that just destroyed an advanced civilization?" "That's exactly what I'm asking," Admiral Martinez replied. "The Valerians are being murdered while the galaxy does nothing. Someone has to act." Dr. James Wright from the European Space Coalition shook his head. "Admiral, we've been trying to join the Galactic Accord for 10 years. If we attack the Kreth, every advanced civilization will see us as violent barbarians. We'll never be accepted as equals." "Maybe being accepted isn't as important as doing what's right," Martinez said. The African Union representative, Minister Amara Okafor, leaned forward. "Admiral, I respect your feelings, but let's be realistic. Earth has 12 billion people spread across 6 worlds and 20 space stations. The Kreth Dominion controls hundreds of star systems. This isn't a fight we can win. The Valerians saved the New Horizon," Martinez reminded them. 2,000 colonists would have died if they hadn't helped. They asked for nothing in return. "That was 40 years ago," said Admiral Kenji Nakamura from the Asian Pacific Alliance. "A medical rescue is very different from a military intervention." The debate went on for hours. Earth's military leaders pulled up tactical analyses on their screens. Humanity's fleet consisted of 43 warships, mostly destroyers and cruisers built for fighting pirates and asteroids. The Kreth had hundreds of ships, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything humans had ever built. "Our weapons are kinetic projectiles and nuclear missiles," reported General Lisa Rodriguez, Earth's top military strategist. "The galactic powers use plasma beams and energy shields. Our technology is at least a century behind theirs. The Kreth just destroyed a civilization that was more advanced than us," added Dr. Wright. "What makes you think we can do better?" Admiral Martinez looked around the room at the worried faces. These were good people trying to make an impossible decision. Earth had finally achieved peace after centuries of war. No one wanted to throw that away for a fight they couldn't win. "I know the odds," Martinez said quietly. "I know we'll probably lose. But I also know who we are. Humans have never been the strongest or the smartest species in the galaxy. But we've never walked away when innocent people needed help." The Chinese representative, Minister Wang Lei, spoke up. Admiral, what exactly are you proposing? Even if we decided to help, how would we get there in time? The journey takes 2 weeks at maximum speed, Martinez replied. We could have 3 battle groups in Valerian space before the Kreth finish their genocide. 3 battle groups is almost our entire fleet, pointed out Admiral Nakamura. If we lose those ships, Earth will be defenseless. If we don't try to stop the Kreth, other peaceful civilizations will be next, Martinez argued. When they come for us, who will help? The same galactic powers that are ignoring the Valerians right now? The room fell silent. Everyone knew he was right. The Galactic Accord had shown its true face during this crisis. When push came to shove, every civilization looked out for itself. President Chen called for a short break. The representatives split into smaller groups, arguing in hushed voices. Admiral Martinez watched them and wondered if humanity had become too comfortable, too safe. Maybe they had forgotten what it meant to fight for something bigger than themselves. Dr. Elena Vasquez from the Xenobiology Institute approached him during the break. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had spent years studying alien psychology. Admiral, I've been analyzing the Kreth military communications we've intercepted, she said. They're not just destroying the Valerians for territory or resources. They're doing it because they see peaceful species as weak and disgusting. What does that mean for us? Martinez asked. It means they'll come for Earth eventually, she replied. Maybe not this year or next year, but someday. The Kreth believe that only the strong deserve to survive. They'll see our friendship with the Valerians as a sign of weakness. When the session resumed, the vote was closer than anyone expected. The older representatives, who remembered Earth's long history of wars, mostly voted against intervention. The younger ones, who had grown up believing in humanity's duty to protect the innocent, voted in favor. In the end, the decision came down to a single vote. Minister Okafor had been silent for the last hour, clearly struggling with the choice. When her name was called, she looked directly at Admiral Martinez. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the genocides in Africa centuries ago, she said slowly, about how the world watched and did nothing while millions died. She made me promise that if I ever had the power to stop something like that, I would use it. She paused, took a deep breath, and said, I vote yes. The final tally was 26 in favor, 25 against. Earth would go to war. Admiral Martinez felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a heavy coat. In the next room, junior officers were already pulling together the battle plans. 3 groups of ships would make the jump to Valerian space. Alpha Group with 15 ships, Beta Group with 12, and Gamma Group with 10. Martinez would command Alpha Group personally. As the representatives signed off and the room emptied, Admiral Martinez stood alone looking at the star charts. In 2 weeks, humanity would face its first real test as a galactic civilization. They would either prove themselves as defenders of the innocent, or they would die trying. The news spread quickly across Earth and its colonies. Some people protested, saying it was suicide to fight the Kreth. Others volunteered for the mission, wanting to serve on the ships heading to Valerian space. The media called it everything from humanity's finest hour to the stupidest decision in Earth's history. But in the military shipyards orbiting Earth, Luna and Mars, thousands of men and women worked around the clock to prepare the fleet. They loaded weapons, checked engines, and said goodbye to their families. Many of them knew they might not come home. Captain Sarah Chen, commanding the destroyer Indomitable, received her orders while docked at Luna Station. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt for 5 years, but this would be different. This was war against an enemy that had already proven it could destroy entire civilizations. Are you scared? Her first officer asked as they watched the final supply ships dock with their vessel. Sarah looked out at Earth, hanging blue and beautiful in the distance. Terrified, she admitted. But that's not the point. The point is that someone is screaming for help and we're the only ones answering. The fleet would depart in 72 hours. Across human space, families gathered to watch the news broadcasts. Children asked their parents why the spaceships were leaving. Veterans of the pirate wars came out of retirement to serve on the crews. And in the depths of space, the Valerian survivors continued to fight their hopeless battle, not knowing that help was finally coming. They had called out to the galaxy and received silence. They had no idea that Earth had heard their cry and decided to send something the galaxy had never seen before. Humans who refused to let innocent people die alone. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Valerian system. What they saw made even the most experienced officers sick to their stomachs. 3 planets burned in the distance, their surfaces glowing red from orbital bombardment. Debris from destroyed ships and space stations formed a deadly cloud around the system's star. Admiral Martinez stood on the bridge of the cruiser Defiance, his command ship. Through the main screen, he could see the massive Kreth fleet surrounding New Valeria, the last surviving Valerian world. Black insectoid warships hung in space like vultures, taking turns bombing the planet below. "Admiral, we're detecting 17 Valerian ships hiding in the asteroid belt," reported Commander Lisa Park, his tactical officer. "They're badly damaged but still alive." "And the Kreth fleet?" Martinez asked. 137 vessels, sir, ranging from destroyers to dreadnoughts. The largest ship appears to be their command vessel. It's 3 times the size of our biggest cruiser." Martinez did the math quickly. 37 human ships against 137 Kreth vessels. Those were terrible odds, but humans had faced worse before. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Martinez. I know what you're thinking. We're outnumbered 4-1 by an enemy that just destroyed an advanced civilization. Any sane military commander would retreat and call for backup." He paused, looking around his bridge at the determined faces of his crew. "But we're not here to be sane. We're here because innocent people are dying and no one else would help them. In 10 minutes, we're going to hit those Kreth ships harder than they've ever been hit before. Remember, we're not trying to win a glorious victory. We're trying to buy time for the Valerians to evacuate." On the Kreth command ship, Hive Lord Zektar was informed of the human arrival by one of his junior officers. The massive insect barely looked up from his tactical display. "Humans?" He clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his species. "I have heard of them. A primitive species from the Galactic Rim. They still use chemical projectiles instead of energy weapons." "Sir, they have 37 ships," the officer reported. "Irrelevant. These creatures have never fought a real war. Watch how quickly they flee when they see our true power." The first engagement began when Captain Sarah Chen led a squadron of destroyers against a group of Kreth cruisers. The aliens expected a long-range battle with energy weapons, but the humans did something unexpected. They charged straight at the enemy ships. "All power to engines," Sarah ordered as her ship Indomitable raced toward a Kreth cruiser. "Arm the torpedoes and prepare for close-range engagement." The Kreth captain was confused. Why were the humans getting so close? Energy weapons were most effective at long range, where you could track your target and fire precisely. Fighting at close range was just asking to be destroyed. He found out why when the human torpedoes hit his ship. These weren't energy weapons that his shields could deflect. They were physical objects moving at incredible speed, punching through his armor like bullets through paper. His ship's hull cracked, atmosphere bleeding out into space. "Return fire," he ordered. But the humans were already past him, using his own ship as cover while they attacked the next target. Across the battlefield, other human captains were discovering that their primitive weapons had unexpected advantages. Major Yuki Tanaka, commanding the destroyer Rising Sun, used magnetic mines disguised as debris to cripple a Kreth battleship. Commander Paul Anderson on the Thunderstrike coordinated with 2 other ships to perform a ramming attack that split a Kreth heavy cruiser in half. The Kreth had never fought an enemy that used such tactics. In galactic warfare, there were unwritten rules. You positioned your ships properly, exchanged fire at appropriate ranges, and accepted defeat when your losses became too great. The humans seemed to ignore all of these rules. "Sir, the humans are using their smaller ships as guided missiles," reported a panicked Kreth officer. Hive Lord Zektar watched in disbelief as a human corvette, its engines damaged and crew already evacuated, was steered directly into one of his heavy destroyers. The explosion took out both ships, but the humans seemed perfectly willing to make that trade. "These creatures fight like animals," he muttered. "No honor, no proper tactics." But the strangest thing wasn't their tactics, it was how they reacted to losses. When galactic civilizations lost ships in battle, the survivors would retreat to regroup and plan their next move. When humans lost ships, the survivors seemed to get angry. Admiral Martinez coordinated the fleet's movements from his command ship, but he wasn't just giving orders. He was listening to the communications between his ships, and what he heard filled him with pride. "This is vengeance. The Kreth just destroyed the peaceful star, moving to engage their flagship. Iron Will here. We've lost main engines, but weapons are still online. Requesting permission to ram that dreadnought. Freedom reporting. Our medical bay is treating Valerian survivors. We will hold position and fight to the last man. The humans weren't just fighting a battle. They were fighting for something they believed in. And that made them dangerous in ways the Kreth couldn't understand. The turning point came when Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Torres led a desperate boarding action against a Kreth command ship. His assault shuttles launched from the carrier Liberty, racing through a storm of enemy fire to dock with the alien vessel. Remember, these things are big and tough, but they've never fought humans in close combat, Torres told his Marines as they prepared to cut through the enemy airlock. Show them what we learned fighting in the tunnels of Mars. The Kreth soldiers inside the ship were confident. They were individually stronger than any human, with natural armor and deadly claws. But when the humans burst through the airlock, the aliens discovered that individual strength meant nothing against human teamwork and creativity. The humans moved through the ship's corridors like ghosts, using everything from flashbang grenades to improvised booby traps. They turned the alien ship's own gravity and atmosphere against its crew. When the Kreth tried to corner them in the engine room, the humans simply vented the entire section to space and continued fighting in vacuum suits. "Sir, we're receiving a surrender offer from the Kreth command ship," reported Commander Park. Admiral Martinez was surprised. In all their intelligence reports, no one had ever mentioned the Kreth surrendering. "Put them through." Hive Lord Zektar appeared on the screen, his 4 eyes wide with something that might have been fear. "Human Commander, I offer you terms. Withdraw your ships and we will consider sparing your homeworld when we expand into your territory." Martinez looked at the alien's image for a long moment. "Counteroffer, Bugface. Get out of this system now, or we'll keep doing what we're doing until there's nothing left of your fleet but scrap metal." "You cannot be serious. You are outnumbered 3-1. "Look around," Martinez said calmly. "We've destroyed 20 of your ships and damaged 30 more. You've managed to kill about 200 humans. At this rate, we'll wipe out your entire fleet before dinner time." The transmission ended. Martinez turned to his tactical officer. "Status report?" "We've lost 8 ships, Admiral. But the Kreth are retreating from the planet. Our attack has given the Valerian evacuation fleet time to escape with most of the civilian population." On the surface of New Valeria, Captain Thessa Moore watched human fighters streak overhead, chasing Kreth bombers away from the refugee camps. She had given up hope days ago, but these strange aliens from the edge of space had proven that miracles could still happen. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "we're getting a message from the human flagship. They want to coordinate our evacuation." Thessa smiled for the first time in weeks. The galaxy had abandoned them, but Earth had sent something better than diplomats or economic sanctions. Earth had sent warriors who fought like the universe owed them a debt, and they had come to collect. The news of the human intervention spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the halls of the Galactic Accord, representatives who had spent weeks debating the proper response to the Valerian crisis watched in stunned silence as reports came in from the front lines. "The humans are using what tactics?" asked Ambassador Vexhai of the Helix Confederacy, his 3 heads turning toward the military analyst in disbelief. "Ramming attacks, sir. They're deliberately crashing their smaller ships into Kreth vessels. They're also boarding enemy ships and fighting hand-to-hand in the corridors." The ambassador's species had evolved beyond physical violence millions of years ago. The idea of actually touching an enemy in combat was barbaric to him. "And this is working?" "Yes, sir. The Kreth have lost 43 ships in the last 6 hours. Their forces are retreating from 2 Valerian worlds." Across the galaxy, military experts tried to understand what they were seeing. The humans weren't following any recognized tactical doctrine. Their formations looked chaotic. Their attacks seemed suicidal. And their responses to casualties defied all logic. Dr. Kent Moravat, the galaxy's leading expert on military psychology, published an emergency analysis that would become famous. Human warfare appears to be driven by emotion rather than calculation. When they lose ships instead of retreating to minimize further losses, they seem to become more aggressive. This suggests a fundamental difference in how they process combat stress. But the real shock came when Galactic Intelligence Services analyzed the human communications intercepts. Other species fought to achieve military objectives: territory, resources, strategic advantage. The humans were fighting for something entirely different: "Listen to this transmission from one of their destroyers," said General Takmor of the Stellar Federation, playing an audio file for his staff. The voice was clearly human, speaking to his crew during a desperate battle. "The Kreth think they can murder an entire civilization and nobody will stop them. They think being strong gives them the right to kill the innocent. Well, today they learn that humans don't accept that. Today they learn that some lines you don't cross." The general's military staff sat in uncomfortable silence. In their civilizations, war was a tool of policy, something you did to achieve specific goals. But these humans seemed to be fighting a crusade. Meanwhile, in the Valerian system, Admiral Martinez was learning that conventional tactics only worked so far against an enemy with superior technology. The Kreth had regrouped after their initial losses, bringing in reinforcements from nearby systems. The human fleet was now outnumbered 6-1. "Admiral, we're getting reports from our scouts," Commander Park reported. 30 more Kreth ships just dropped out of FTL. They're forming up for a massive assault on our position. Martinez studied the tactical display. The Kreth were learning to adapt to human tactics, keeping their ships at longer range and using their superior firepower to hammer the human fleet. But humans could adapt too. "Signal all ships," Martinez ordered. "Operation Madhouse is now in effect." Captain Sarah Chen smiled grimly when she received the order on the Indomitable. Operation Madhouse was something Admiral Martinez had developed during the journey to Valerian space. A tactical plan so crazy that no sane species would expect it. "All hands. This is the captain," she announced to her crew. "We're about to do something that will either save this battle or get us all killed. Probably both. Engineering, I need you to overload our reactor, but keep it stable for exactly 30 minutes. Captain." "That could cause a core breach," her chief engineer protested. "That's the point," Sarah replied. "We're turning this ship into the galaxy's biggest fragmentation grenade." Across the human fleet, similar preparations were underway. Engineers overloaded reactors, weapons officers loaded every missile tube, and pilots said quiet prayers to gods their species hadn't believed in for centuries. The Kreth attack began with a massive barrage of plasma fire. Their strategy was simple: use their range advantage to destroy the human ships before they could get close enough to use their primitive weapons. It should have worked. Instead, the humans did something that violated every principle of space combat. They flew straight into the plasma barrage, taking massive damage but refusing to break formation. Ships with their hulls on fire continued to advance. Vessels venting atmosphere kept their weapons online. Major Yuki Tanaka, her destroyer Rising Sun crippled but still fighting, opened a channel to the Kreth fleet as she guided her ship toward their largest dreadnought. "Hey, bugfaces. You want to know the difference between you and us? When you hit us, we get back up. When we hit you, you stay down." Her ship's reactor went critical just as it impacted the Kreth dreadnought. The explosion lit up the entire battlefield, taking both vessels and crippling 2 nearby Kreth cruisers. The psychological effect on the Kreth was devastating. These humans didn't just accept casualties. They weaponized them. Every disabled human ship became a potential guided missile. Every damaged vessel might be hiding a crew crazy enough to ram the nearest enemy. Colonel Marcus Torres, having successfully captured his second Kreth vessel in 3 days, broadcast a message on all Kreth frequencies that became legendary across the galaxy. "Attention, Kreth forces. This is Colonel Marcus Torres of the Human Space Marines. We're currently in your ship. We've captured your bridge and we're using your own weapons against your fleet. Just wanted you to know. This is what happens when you mess with people under our protection." The message was accompanied by footage of human Marines in powered armor, moving through Kreth ship corridors like unstoppable machines. The aliens had never seen anything like it. These humans fought with a combination of high technology and primitive savagery that was utterly terrifying. Hive Lord Zektar watched his fleet fall apart around him. In 3 days of fighting, he had lost over 60 ships to an enemy that should have been easily crushed. His own vessel had been boarded twice, and only desperate counterattacks had prevented its capture. "Sir, we're receiving reports from across the Dominion," his communications officer reported. "The news of our difficulties has reached the outer worlds. Some of our client species are wondering if the Kreth military is as invincible as we claimed." That was the real danger, Zektar realized. The Kreth Dominion was built on fear and respect for their military power. If word spread that a primitive species had defeated them, rebellions would break out across their territory, But the humans weren't finished. Dr. Elena Vasquez, monitoring alien communications from the science vessel Discovery, had identified a weakness in the Kreth command structure. "Admiral, the Kreth use a rigid hierarchy system," she reported to Martinez. "All their tactical decisions flow through their command ship. If we can disrupt their communications or capture their leader, their entire fleet will be paralyzed." Martinez looked at the massive Kreth dreadnought on his tactical display. It was 3 times the size of his largest ship, heavily armored and surrounded by escort vessels. A conventional attack would be suicide. Commander Park signaled the Liberty. "Tell Colonel Torres I have a special mission for his Marines." The final phase of the battle began with the most audacious assault in human military history. Every remaining human ship converged on the Kreth command vessel, sacrificing themselves to create a gap in its defenses. The carrier Liberty, her hull breached in a dozen places, managed to get close enough to launch assault shuttles directly at the dreadnought's bridge. What happened next became the subject of military studies for centuries. Colonel Torres and his Marines didn't just capture the Kreth command ship, they took control of its entire communication network and used it to broadcast surrender orders to the remaining Kreth fleet. "This is your new commanding officer," Torres announced on all Kreth frequencies, his powered armor covered in alien blood. "As of right now, this system belongs to the Valyrians. Any ship that doesn't jump out of here in the next 10 minutes gets to find out why humans are the scariest thing in the galaxy." The Kreth fleet retreated in complete disorder, leaving behind 67 destroyed vessels and their commanding officer as a human prisoner. The Valyrian Republic was saved, but the galaxy would never be the same. In the aftermath of the battle, as human ships limped toward Valyrian space stations for repairs, the wider implications began to sink in. A species that most galactic powers barely acknowledged had just defeated one of the most feared military forces in known space. "Sir," Commander Park said quietly to Admiral Martinez as they watched Valyrian refugee ships returning to their homeworld, "we've received over 100 communications from other species. Some are requesting military assistance. Others are offering trade agreements. A few are asking if we're interested in territorial expansion." Martinez was quiet for a long moment, watching human and Valyrian crews working together to repair damaged stations. "Send the same response to all of them," he said finally. "Tell them that humans don't conquer worlds. We protect them." 6 months after the Battle of New Valyria, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. In the great halls of the Galactic Accord, emergency sessions continued as representatives struggled to deal with the new reality. "The situation is unprecedented," announced Chancellor Vorthak, the elderly leader of the Accord. His 12 eyes blinked slowly as he reviewed the reports spread across his desk. "A species that was barely recognized as sapient has defeated one of our most powerful military forces." Ambassador Yexhai of the Helix Confederacy shifted uncomfortably in his floating chair. "Chancellor, perhaps we should reconsider the humans' application for membership. Their military capabilities are clearly more advanced than we initially assessed." "Advanced?" The Zephyrian representative's ancient voice crackled through the translation matrix. "They use chemical explosives and metal projectiles. My people were building energy weapons when their species was still discovering fire. And yet they won," pointed out the Mineral World's delegate. "They defeated the Kreth using tactics that our best military minds can barely comprehend." The debate had been going on for weeks. Some members wanted to immediately invite humanity into the Accord as a full member. Others feared that accepting such a violent species would upset the delicate balance of galactic politics. A few quietly suggested that humanity should be considered a threat to be contained rather than an ally to be courted. Meanwhile, in the Valyrian system, a different kind of revolution was taking place. Human engineers worked alongside Valyrian scientists to rebuild the damaged worlds. Human Marines trained Valyrian security forces in new defensive tactics. Most importantly, human diplomats were teaching the Valyrians something they had never learned: how to fight back. Captain Thessa Moore walked through the command center of New Valeria's orbital defense station, amazed at the transformation. Where once there had been only medical facilities and research labs, now there were weapons arrays and tactical centers. The Valyrians were still peaceful by nature, but they were no longer helpless. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth," her communications officer reported. "Admiral Martinez wants to speak with you personally." Thessa smiled. Over the past months, she had developed a deep friendship with the human admiral. He had taught her that there was no shame in being prepared for war, even if you hoped it would never come. "Admiral," she said, as his image appeared on her screen. "How are the repairs coming on the Defiance?" "Slowly but surely," Martinez replied. "More importantly, I have news. We've been monitoring Kreth communications and they're planning something big. Not against you, against us." Thessa felt a chill. "What kind of something?" "Intelligence suggests they're building a massive fleet specifically designed to attack Earth. They want revenge for their defeat here, and they want to prove to the galaxy that humans aren't as dangerous as everyone thinks." In the depths of Kreth space, Hive Lord Zektar's replacement was indeed planning humanity's destruction. War leader Vexkoth was younger and more aggressive than his predecessor, burning with the need to restore Kreth honor. "The humans must be crushed completely," he declared to his assembled commanders. "Not defeated, obliterated. When we are finished, no trace of their civilization will remain." War leader, one of his subordinates, ventured carefully. "The humans fought with unusual tactics. Perhaps we should study their methods more carefully before—" "Silence." Vexkoth's mandibles clicked angrily. "They are primitives who got lucky. This time, we will be prepared for their tricks." But across the galaxy, other species were also preparing. The news of humanity's victory had spread to every corner of known space, reaching civilizations that had suffered under Kreth aggression for generations. On the mining world of Kepler 442, the Draconi workers who had been enslaved by the Kreth for decades heard the stories of human marines fighting in ship corridors. For the first time in years, they began to hope. In the Outer Rim territories, pirate clans that had preyed on peaceful traders suddenly found themselves facing human patrol ships. The pirates quickly learned that humans didn't just escort merchant vessels. They hunted down pirates and destroyed their bases. Dr. Elena Vasquez published her final report on the Valerian campaign from her office on Luna Station. The document would become required reading in military academies across human space. The Kreth expected us to fight like a civilized galactic power, with calculated risks, acceptable losses, and rational objectives. Instead, they encountered a species that treats the protection of innocence as a moral imperative. "When we fight to save others, we don't calculate odds. We calculate how to make the enemy regret attacking innocent people." Her analysis went deeper, examining what made humans unique in galactic society. Other species had evolved past their aggressive phases, becoming peaceful through necessity or philosophy. Humans had kept their warrior instincts while developing the wisdom to use them only for protection. "Most galactic civilizations see violence as a failure of diplomacy," she wrote. "Humans see violence as a tool that should only be used when diplomacy fails to protect the innocent. This fundamental difference in perspective makes us uniquely suited to serve as the galaxy's peacekeepers." The response from Earth's government was swift and decisive. President Sarah Chen addressed the United Earth Council in an emergency session that was broadcast across human space. "6 months ago, we made a decision that changed our place in the galaxy forever. We chose to answer a cry for help when no one else would. That choice defined who we are as a species." She paused, looking around at the representatives who had voted to send the fleet to Valerian space. "Now the Kreth are coming for us, and other civilizations are watching to see what we'll do. Some expect us to hide behind our defenses and hope someone else solves the problem. Others think we'll seek revenge and become conquerors ourselves. We're going to disappoint both groups. We're going to do what humans have always done. We're going to fight for what's right, and we're going to win." The preparations began immediately. Earth shipyards expanded after the Valerian campaign went into full production. New ship designs incorporated lessons learned from fighting the Kreth, combining human innovation with Valerian medical technology and defensive systems. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. Captain Thessa Moore stood before the Valerian Parliament, addressing her people in a speech that would echo across the galaxy. "For too long, we believed that peace meant avoiding conflict at any cost. The humans have taught us a better way. True peace means being strong enough to protect the innocent and wise enough to know when strength must be used." The vote was unanimous. The Valerian Republic would stand with humanity against the Kreth invasion. Word of the alliance spread quickly, and other species began to take notice. The peaceful Altarians, who had been neutral in galactic conflicts for centuries, quietly began sharing their advanced shield technology with human engineers. The warrior caste of the Rigel system offered to train human marines in zero-gravity combat techniques. Even some former enemies reached out. The Corsair Brotherhood, a confederation of pirates that had lost dozens of ships to human patrols, sent a coded message offering to help fight the Kreth. Their reasoning was simple: better to fight alongside humans than against them. Admiral Martinez stood on the observation deck of the new space station orbiting Earth, watching the largest fleet in human history assemble. 67 ships, including the powerful new battleship Humanity's Shield, prepared for the coming war. "Sir," Commander Park approached with a datapad. "Final intelligence reports from our scouts. The Kreth are bringing everything they have, over 300 ships, including their new Dreadnought-class vessels." Martinez nodded. The odds were still terrible, but they were better than they had been at New Valeria. More importantly, humanity wasn't alone this time. "What about our allies?" he asked. 40 Valerian ships with advanced medical and support capabilities, 23 vessels from various smaller species, and... Park smiled. "The Altarians are sending their best ship, the Eternal Vigil. It's supposedly impossible to destroy." The final piece came from Earth itself. In recruitment centers across human space, volunteers lined up to join the fleet. The signs were simple but effective. They screamed for help. The galaxy sent silence. Earth sent you. Young men and women who had grown up hearing stories of the Valerian rescue wanted their chance to serve. Veterans of the pirate wars came out of retirement. Even civilians volunteered for support roles, determined to do their part. Dr. Elena Vasquez found herself assigned to the flagship as the fleet's xenopsychology expert. Her job would be to predict Kreth behavior and help develop new tactics. As she packed her belongings, she reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, humanity had been an unknown species on the galactic rim, hoping to be accepted as junior members of galactic society. Now they were preparing to lead an alliance against one of the galaxy's most feared powers. The departure ceremony was broadcast across human space and beyond. Representatives from dozens of species attended, some offering support, others simply wanting to witness what might be humanity's last stand. As the massive fleet began its journey toward the predicted Kreth staging area,